Welcome to Ask Between the Keyframes on Motionographer.
Welcome back, Erin.
Hi, Austin. You're so animated today.
Right, I got energy.
You do got energy. Okay, well, this week we're not going to say who submitted the question because they wish to remain anonymous. But it was a great question, so we're going to dig in. I'll give it a read. What area of motion graphics has the biggest budgets and the most creative freedom or rewarding creative work? I feel like it used to be ad work before 2008, but when the crash came and I was working at Leo Burnett, things drastically changed after that. We saw droves of layoffs and never really had the same kind of work or budgets ever again. So that's kind of a big question, and it's a really great question. I broke it into two. So why don't I start with the first one, and then you can jump in.
Sure.
So the easier of the two is how do you find the most creative freedom, rewarding creative work? And I think that's really just different for everyone. There's no way I could possibly answer that. I know, like, if I've been working in one category, I can't wait to get out and get into a different category for a bit, then into a different. I love a diversity of work. That's like what drove me as a designer, and that's probably more why we're a generalist studios, because we take all of the variety of work very seriously, both like from a category perspective and a stylistic perspective. But that's different for everyone. I think maybe the bigger intention behind the question is to ask if it's like, remember the days of MTV? We were talking about this a little while ago, like
art projects.
They were like art. You just went and made cool stuff, and people were like, oh my God, how did you even make that? Let's put that on the air. And it's just not like that anymore. You know, I feel like maybe in the NFT space, it's like that. And certainly
True.
We've seen digital artists, like people pop up and is obviously doing really well in that space because he had a career doing it for a long time before. But in the commercial space where we're paid artists for clients, I think that creative freedom is something that, like, you're always just kind of looking for, like, the avenues within the scope of the job to be creative and for opportunities to go do cool work within the brief. So that's my thoughts on that. But
that actually just made me think of something. I remember talking to a flame artist. We were riding home on the train from New York City to Westchester, and I remember him saying that he found his mission was to find something in every project that he was passionate about, right? And it could have been like learning a new tool or just figuring out a workflow, and that stuck with me, and I think that
really
is
cool.
sort of it's like a really good sustainable, because it's like no project is going to be all the things. Mm-hmm. I mean, and if it is, maybe. But typically it's like, hey, maybe it's got a good budget, but it's not the most interesting, or maybe it's super interesting, but the budget's not great, and it's usually a mix.
It's always a mix. I like that, though, even on like jobs that are a total disaster, and everybody's had them for whatever reasons. It's nice to kind of walk away with like one nugget of something. Just
right. To make it your goal to get something.
Get something.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on the other part where I can speak to this too, but the bigger budget jobs?
I mean, I could speak historically. My experience, car commercials were like huge, right? That was always like everybody, all the studios in the 2000s, like all the up and coming studios, they all wanted to get a car commercial because it was like massive budgets.
Yeah.
Any kind of luxury brands, I think healthcare, medical, pharma, those all have a lot of money advertising still. I think this idea of, but to the point illustrating the question, the like one massive TV commercial budget has now been, chopped up and filtered out into like, there might be a smaller, TV budget, but then there's a bunch of different types of campaigns, or if they're going to do a shoot with post-production and graphics, they want that to work across as many platforms and get as much mileage as possible. So TV, out of home, social media, like all the places, like they're going to use those assets. So those budgets are getting just spread out. Yeah.
Same peanut butter, more bread.
Yeah.
A little bit, but I have to say, like, as a business owner, I've seen that change, and maybe it's just the kind of business I'm running. Like, we don't have technically a minimum engagement fee because I don't like to be so rigid about things. But I know studios that, like, you can't even talk to them without a certain budget. And I think that there are just some studios that just attract bigger budget caliber work. Like, for example, if you do a big animated illustrated campaign, you could take that to more of a how-to video company that can do a really beautiful job on it, or you could take it to like a big elite studio. And the budget is going to be completely different that they hand you back based on their overhead, their expertise, what they feel like their worth, their value is. It's not just necessarily making it, it's the expertise of having made it since the beginning of the industry. So when you are a client, you know where you're taking your job, because you're not going to take your small budget job to a big studio, because there are options now available. So I think the work is out there. It's just maybe where you are to capture it that is different.
That's a great point. I mean, and just thinking about, for me, the way I work as a kind of a small operator, I stay very busy doing a lot of smaller, like I get a lot of the, things going out to social, direct to client. And I've tailored it towards the kinds of things I like to do, and the types in the timelines I like too. Mm-hmm. Lots of like kind of smaller, faster pace, but that's very personal and just figuring out what you like. So it goes back to like what creative freedom means to you and what rewarding means to you in that context.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think overall, like, budgets are getting better. I think this idea of what a TV budget was and what a digital budget was it's production value that people know they're paying for now. It's not necessarily where it's going, whether it's here or there on the screen. Like, it kind of doesn't matter. It all speaks to the brand and where they're at from a production value standpoint. And I think that's where, our value as designers and artists come in,
That reminds me, I think this might have been around 2015, maybe even earlier, when I was working on the first edition of Design for Motion, and I interviewed you. You were my first interviewee, and
oh gosh,
we were talking about social.
Yeah.
And you were like, you were describing how it's changed. And at that point you were like, a few years back, the social deliverables were just like, just throw it together. It could be whatever. But the expectation is it's got to be as high of a production value as the TV commercial, And I remember that impacted me because I still remember it.
It must be true. Okay, well, person who we will not mention, thank you for asking us this question. I think a lot of people have been wondering the same thing as you.
Cool. Thank you.
Bye.